Hello, my confident, charismatic, creative students. So today, Teacher Iga here, back again with another IGCSE First Language English video, paper 1, Writer's Effect. So question 2D. So I'm going to take it slow and steady, especially for the students who are struggling. Let's learn the techniques and let's do the practice, let's do the brainstorming and write those sentences. So I'm going to think out loud so you learn how to think. So it's going to take time. Of course, in your real exam, you only have 2 hours, so you want to practice time management. But let's go for content, for substance, for quality of techniques first, and then you can practice your time management. So it's going to take a while, but sit tight and let's get to it. So I'm going to pull up a past year paper right now. You can have it on your end as well, and we shall begin. Let me share screen. Okay, so I'm looking at the May-June 2021 paper, paper 1, variant 2. Okay. So when we're looking at question 2D, here, firstly, we have to read the instructions carefully, the question carefully, underline the keywords, understand it, look at the right places for the right answers, right? So let's look at this. Reread paragraphs 1 and 13. Paragraph 1, paragraph 13. So for the 2020 to 2026 papers, this is how it looks like. But 2027 onwards, it's only one paragraph and they put the paragraph right in front of you. But you still need to learn all the same techniques, right? But for students who are taking the October, November 2026 papers, now this is still what you're working with. So you have to make sure to look at the right paragraphs. They help you out by giving you the first few letters of the paragraph. So let's make sure paragraph 1 starts with base emitted, paragraph 13 starts with around us, right? So paragraph 1 begins base emitted and is about the narrator's first impressions of the base station in Antarctica. This is very important. It is the writers of the exam, the examiners, their understanding of the first paragraph. Okay. And then paragraph 13 begins around us and is about the arrival of winter in Antarctica. So this is really good. I'll tell you how you can use it in your answer in just a bit. Okay. Explain how the writer uses language to convey meaning and to create effect in these paragraphs. Choose 3 examples of words or phrases from each paragraph to support your answer. Your choices should include the use of imagery. So writer's effect is a section which understands that writers choose certain words on purpose to make readers feel a certain way, right? These words are special, are unique, are impactful, powerful. So you have to point them out and then you have to explain why they are great. Language techniques, for example, imagery, right? Sensory details. So how do you paint that picture? And it's not just about what you can see, right? If you want to transport your readers into the moment itself, we as human beings experience the world through our 5 senses. So it's not just what you can see, it's also what you can hear, smell, taste, touch, right? So words that build that picture, that's imagery. So we have that. And then you have your figurative language or your literary devices, right? This is what I mean by language techniques. So it's your simile, metaphor, personification. These are the famous ones. There are so many more, right? Hyperbole, onomatopoeia, right? So you have to learn all of these techniques, learn their definitions, their examples, so that when you look at an essay, look at the text, look at a line, you can notice these techniques being used, you can point them out, and you can explain them. So language techniques basically are these 2 things, right? Your words. So it's usually very specific words and very advanced words. vocab, big vocab. And that can be for your nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs. So that's what we're looking at for language. Focus on language. Don't think about structure. If you want to talk about structure, talk about it at the end, right? After you talk about language. So that means the punctuation and the repetition and the way the ideas are structured and sequenced, right? But I would say you can get away with just talking about language. You only need a couple sentences of explanation, right? Like three, 3 to 5, and you're good to go. And you can do that with just language. Convey meaning and create effect, right? So language that stands out to you. 3 examples. Words or phrases. So do not give me full sentences. Just give me a special word or a special phrase. So few words, like 4 to 5 words put together, right? So that's words or phrases for each paragraph. So we have 2 paragraphs here. So we need 2 answer paragraphs. So then we would need 6 examples. Okay, 200 to 300 words. That's a guideline. You can go more or less as long as you are effective and efficient. They won't really count your words. So don't worry about that. I always say, if you're aiming for that A star, give me 2 pages, right? Definitely go beyond this first page. Up to 15 marks are available for the content of your answer. So they don't really mind language. Of course, make sure your spelling, punctuation, grammar is good. You want to give a good first impression, but it's all about the analysis. So 15 marks. Of course, the way examiners mark, they will see your answer as a whole, overall, right, to give you a score. But I think it helps to think about it mathematically. So let's break it down. So if you need 3 phrases for paragraph 1, so for paragraph 1, let me make this bigger. I'll just go with phrase because I feel like it's easier. Figurative language is under there. And then if you only have 1 word, there's not much you can write about. But if you have 2 or 3 words, there's always so much more that you can unpack and unravel. So I'm just going phrase because I think that's much more powerful. But if you can talk a lot about 1 word, go ahead. That's fine too. Okay, so phrase. So phrase 1, even then you get that 1 mark, but then you have to explain it. So you can call it explanation or development, right? So you have to explain why this is great. So even then, phrase, explanation, 2 marks. So you repeat this process 3 times. So it will be phrase 2, phrase 3, and you do the same for the next paragraph. In this case, it's paragraph 13. So let me just copy paste. Okay, paragraph 13. So 2, 4, 6, 6 marks here, 6 marks here. So that's a total of 12 marks. So how do we get to 15? Well, you have to do another thing as well. It's called an overview or overall effect. You can put this at the start of your answer paragraph or at the end of your answer paragraph. If you put it at the start, the logic is that you're giving me a bigger picture, the bigger message of the full paragraph. See, that's where this part of the instructions, the question, comes in. The narrator's first impressions of the base station Antarctica. So that's what the full paragraph is about. But you have to say something about it. You have to give me your opinion. So turn this into a question. What are the narrator's first impressions of the base station Antarctica? And answer it. The narrator's first impressions of the base station Antarctica is, I suggest 3 adjectives. I work in rule of 3s. I always tell students to give 3 of everything. So Basically, you can just use this as the sentence starter and answer it. And that's your overview, overall effect. So it gives us that overview, right? I mean, it gives us, okay, these three phrases I'm going to talk about, this is what they have in common. This is what they're all about. I like putting it at the end. I think it's easier to think about it in terms of a conclusion sentence, of summarizing what all the three phrases have in common. I like that after I've written about each phrase, like I understand them really well, I've analyzed them really well, then I can see what they all have in common, or even if they have differences, I can point that out. So I like thinking about it that way, summary, conclusion, and I do the same thing. So it's up to you whether you want to put it as the first sentence or the last sentence. As long as it's there, you get that one more mark. So then that brings your total up to 7 plus 7 equals 14. So how do we get 15 marks? So for that final mark, as long as your explanations are very detailed, I'll give you that extra mark. This is how I think about it. Hold on. Let me check my tab. Okay. So since I'm only recording it with me, all right. Just making sure it's continuing to record. Okay. So this is how you get your 15 marks mathematically. That's how I think. Now, I've already made an introduction video on writer's effect, where I explain my technique as del queso. So go ahead, watch that video and come back. Of course, I'll do a quick run through again here. And I do this every single time with all my students when we do a writer's effect, because I want them to memorize the techniques and understand them and be able to use them. And, you know, I want the information to get from short-term memory to long-term memory. So this is what I do. So let's refresh, let's revise. So S stands for synonyms. So you tell me, hey, this is a cool phrase. But then I need you to explain why it's cool. And then you're blank. You're like, it's cool because it's cool. That's not enough, right? You need to convince, you need to persuade, you need to justify why you think what you think. So when it comes to analysis, there's two parts. On the surface analysis, right? Just saying things in your own words again, right? That shows me that you get it, you understand. So explicit, straightforward, obvious analysis. That's where your paraphrasing comes into the picture. So, well, you see that special word, you tell me what is the definition of the word? What are the synonyms, words with similar meanings of the word? So synonyms, definition. Okay. Right? Explanation. So explanation, I just park everything else under it. For example, context. So we're taking one word or a few words out of a long sentence and a long paragraph. So context is the opportunity for you to explain the full situation. Like the words around the word, you can be like, oh yeah, it's talking about this overall, right? So this is your way to give more context. Also, more description, more detail. For example, if you're talking about a sound, you can explain, describe the sound. You can say, what's the volume, how loud or soft the sound is. The pitch, how high-pitched or low-pitched the sound is. The pace, how fast or slow, right? So this is your opportunity to use more description, more adjectives to make us understand what that word is all about, what that for example, sound is all about. So more detailed description. And then the next one is tied to the next technique, which is language technique. So this is your literary devices, your figurative language. This is where you say, hey, that's a simile or a metaphor or personification. Or more or less. It's just these are the most famous ones. Here, I need you to memorize the definitions, right? For example, if I ask you, what is a simile? Off the top of your head, you must go, oh, it's when comparing two different things by suggesting that they have a shared similarity in terms of quality or characteristic, right? Well, when it comes to a simile, it's an indirect comparison. So you must use words like or as. See how fast you need to get here if you want that A star, right? But it's good to know the definition because then you can use it to fill in the blanks, to explain. If you say, hey, that's a simile, why do you think it's a simile? You have to explain it to me, even if it's obvious. You have to imagine that the examiners don't know anything and you have to tell them everything to get your marks, to earn your marks. So let's take a basic example. John is as tall as a giraffe. That's a simile. Then you can explain why it's a simile. So you can say, oh, what are the two things being compared to here? Oh, it's this boy and this animal. And what's their common characteristic? What do they have that is similar, same, common? Oh, it's the height. It's a tall height. So then you have to explain, oh, this boy is being compared to this animal, which is one of the tallest animals in the world. And they're being compared in terms of their height. So this highlights how tall John is, how very tall John is. Because through the simile, you have to link these two different elements and talk about what is emphasized, what is highlighted, what is showcased. Then you can now understand that John isn't just tall, he's tall, right? So yeah, so much explanation just by unpacking, just by filling in the blanks for the definition. So this is also what explanation is about, where you define the technique. So this is the explicit analysis. Then you have to go deeper. You have to dig deeper. You have to go underwater. You have to talk about the implicit techniques. For example, connotation. So connotation is just about the fact that words don't just have definitions, they also have cultural meanings, emotional meanings behind them. There are some words we always use in positive situations. Some words we always use in negative situations, right? For example, let's talk about sense, smell. So if something smells good, I'll say, oh, the aroma of the rice is great. If something smells bad, I won't use aroma. I might use the stench of the rubbish, right? They're both words describing smells, but they have different connotations. So this is very classic. You can just look at the word, phrase, the sentence, the paragraph. If it's positive, you can just say, hey, this has a positive connotation. Or you can say, oh, this has a negative connotation. That's about it. It's pretty easy to use. And then you have your emotions. Very important, because you have to point out what the writers wanted us to feel. For this, I like to go above and beyond. I always give 3 emotions. So I would give synonyms. Like I wouldn't just say happy. I would say happiness, joy, and cheer. Right? So you can give synonyms. It bulks up your answer. It makes it more legit. I also always give 3 synonyms. For the synonyms, 3 synonyms, 3 emotions. Rule of 3. If my students want a number, it's always going to be 3. Plus, there's layers, there's nuances. Like sometimes there are a few conflicting or different, emotions there. So then if you have more than one, you can target all of them. So yeah, maybe it's just happiness. It's not just happiness, it's happiness and pride, for example. So you get to put a few different emotions there. Look at the emotion wheel. That helps you recognize that there's so many emotional words out there, right? And the more you learn, the more you can apply. Okay. Situations. Situations. This one is the fact that a word has different definitions and different ways we use it in the world. And so if one way, if the insert, if the sentence is using it in one way, but it reminds you of the other way, you can point it out like, hey, this reminds me of that. This is connected to that, because the writers know this and they're doing this on purpose so that you think of the other ways, and that can emphasize something, that can highlight something about their current sentence in front of you, right? If you look at my intro video, we talk about the word bloom. So let's say your sentence is, my sister bloomed into an amazing dancer. Well, bloomed here means that she's skilled, she's practiced, and she's successful now, right? But then bloom is a very specific word that makes me think of flowers blooming. And that is when flowers reach the peak of their maturity, they open up, they blossom, and they are beautiful and they're fragrant. And so now it makes me think of the sister in this scenario as her skills, her maturity, as being much more beautiful, because I'm thinking of the flowers. So yes, you want to compare it to the other situation and link it back to this situation. So that is what this technique is all about. Again, all these techniques, you don't have to use everything all the time. You just have to pick and choose suitable ones that help you brainstorm good development, good analysis. So choose whatever is suitable, whatever works for you in whatever situation. The last one is overall effect. So this one, I've put it here because my students keep forgetting to do their overview. So just remember that after you've talked about your 3 phrases, you have to give me one sentence about the full paragraph. Like, what does the writer want us to feel about the full paragraph? Okay. So that's your reminder. That's your revision, your refresh here. So let's get down to the paragraph. It might take us a while because I'm going to think out loud spontaneously. I'm going to write in front of you, right? I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to answer them. So I'm just going to do part 1, paragraph 1, and then we'll do part 2, paragraph 13. And then put all our ideas together. Of course, in the real exam, you do this in your mind and then you write your answers straight up. But now I'm going to do like the working, the standard written method, like the formulas, like, in math, you have to kind of write down all of it before getting to the answer. Yeah, I'm going to do that for you so that you can learn how to think. Okay. And then we will put all the ideas together into complete sentences and create that beautiful answer paragraph. All right. Paragraph 1. Let's look at it. Text C, of course. I recommend reading the full text to get the full picture, full idea, full message first. That will help you. Trust me. But for the purposes of this video, we will go straight to the paragraph in question and start there. Of course, I've read this full text. It's about this journalist who goes to Antarctica, this base station, is this big building, this big operation where all these scientists are there doing all their research. So she stays there for many months, So she gets the whole treatment where when she goes there, she gets these briefings, workshops, safety drills. She talks to these scientists. So she's talking about whatever she's seeing and hearing and experiencing, right? So that's what this full essay is about. And the two paragraphs that we have to look at, of course, writer's effect, they're going to give us the most poetic, romantic, dramatic, lyrical, beautiful paragraphs. And it is such, and it is about the landscape, the scenery in Antarctica. So, paragraph 1, well, it's not this little blurb, this little intro that is italic. It is actually this one next, right? That's when the line numbers start up as well. But yes, it starts with base emitted, so we're in the right place. So look at the right place. If you're looking at the wrong place, you get a 0 automatically, right? So what I like to do is I like to bracket the correct paragraphs. So I'm looking at the right place. I might even write down, oh, this is for the writer's effect question, and this is paragraph 1. Okay. Just know that every line could have special words or phrases. So, there's no right or wrong. It's, after all, not math. It's not 1 + 1. It's first language English. As long as you can explain, justify, persuade, you should be fine. Like, you will get your marks. So don't be too scared. Just make sure to choose phrases that you feel confident that you can talk a lot about, you can write a lot about. So that means looking at it and thinking first, right? Okay, so let's look at this. Bass emitted a hushed grandeur, as if a vault door had been closed, all noise guarded fiercely behind it. A gunshot-like crack echoed through the air, an iceberg rotating, then a roar like a distant waterfall, as another chunk of the ice shelf collapsed into the bay. Rough squawks of squaws were magnified through the telescope of empty dry air. There were no smells of soil, trees, nor grass, only the scent of Antarctica, like two stones rubbed together. Flint. What did I tell you? It's a very pretty paragraph. Very beautiful writing. Okay. Figurative language always stands out to me first, especially similes, metaphors. Like when I can see two comparisons, I can see the words like being used, as being used. So I'm like really on track there. Another piece of advice is that if you can choose one phrase from the beginning, middle, and end, that would be great because it gives an overall understanding of the full paragraph. Though, of course, choose phrases that you can talk a lot about. So then, even if they are beside each other, that takes precedence. Like that should be prioritized, right? But if you can, space them out. If not, it's okay. Okay, so I'm looking at this. First things first, hushed grandeur. Those are very specific words. In fact, hush and grandeur, I can think about them in terms of their root words as well. Take out the prefix, suffix, hush, grandeur, grand. So I know the word grand, I know the word hush, but they are opposites. They are different. So there's something there. Hushed is like quiet and small and low, right? But then grand, magnificent, splendid. So, hushed grandeur. Contrast. So contrast is antonyms, opposites. When there are two things that are at odds beside each other, right? Tall and short, day and night. Grumpy X sunshine, So hush grandeur. This makes me think of the technique oxymoron. So it's when we put two things that are opposites together and they mean their own thing, like deafening silence. Silence is no sound, but deafening means loud. But then deafening silence means that the silence is so profound, like so obvious, right? So hush grandeur has that quality as well, right? Because hushed is small, but grandeur is big. But then hushed grandeur as a whole makes you think that it's beautiful, but then low key, right? So that stands out to me. As if a vault door had been closed. Oh, vault door makes me think of banks, like heist movies, right? And like behind there's like millions of dollars. Hmm. Like the red lasers, and they have like retina scans and like passwords. But anyway, it's guarding something that's precious and valuable, gems and gold, right? And they're saying that like the base is the vault. That's interesting. That's a S. They use the word S. So that's a simile. That's interesting. A gunshot like crack echoed through the air. Oh, that's interesting too. Like, what is being compared to what? The iceberg rotating, this sound is being compared to the sound of a gun. That's a simile. Okay, that's interesting. Hmm. Roar like a distant waterfall. Chunk of the ice shelf collapse. So ice falling is being compared to the sound of waterfall, the sound of waterfall, but distant, far away. And roar, roar. That makes me think of tigers and lions. And the growling sound. That's pretty fun too. That's a simile. Hmm. Rough squawks of squaws. This is a type of bird, and it's making this noisy, cawing sound. And it's very loud because there's no other sounds around it. That's fun. It's clearly imagery of sound as well. Okay. Hmm. Like two stones rubbed together. Very Stone Age camping, intense camping. Two stones. Then you get the spark, and then you can make your own fire. That's a wonderful image as well. So you need to quickly read this paragraph and brainstorm, right? Like ask yourself questions, think about what are the techniques here? Is there many things I can say about it? And then choose three. Again, there's no right answer. As long as you choose three and explain them well, you should be fine. So I'm going to choose Hush Grandeur, gunshot like crack, or roar like a distant waterfall. Okay, so I have my three phrases. Okay, I'm going to write down on Google Docs so it's easier for you to see. So let's screenshot this. I must also screenshot the question. Hold on. Let me do that. A lot of my students write down as del queso at the side of their exam papers just to remember the techniques. You can do that too. Whatever helps. So let me put the question there. Okay. So let's take it slow and let's use as del queso to brainstorm. And let me make this bigger so it helps you. 20? Yeah. Let's write down our 3 phrases first. When I'm copying quoting, I put my open and closed inverted commas. I do 1 instead of 2. I keep the 2 for dialogue, for stories. So yes, hushed grandeur. Of course, again, in the exam, you can go straight to your answers, but now I want to slowly take you there, right? So these are our 3 phrases. A gunshot-like crack and a roar like a distant waterfall. I'm not putting both the comparisons in, but that's fine. I'll explain it in my answer, so don't worry. Okay, so let's look at harsh grandeur. There are 2 words here. When it comes to words, easy peasy, just get me the definition and synonyms first, right? So let's see, hushed. Let me do definition, synonym. And let me try my best to give 3 synonyms. And then I'll do the same for grandeur. Okay. See, you can use vocabulary.com or Merriam-Webster, Oxford, Cambridge, any websites, any dictionaries, especially when you're first learning writer's effect. I don't mind. I think it helps you think about the techniques and widen your vocabulary. So it's okay to use dictionaries to help you out, to use thesaurus.com for the synonyms. That's perfectly fine. Though long term, you need to learn how to do this on your own because you are on your own during your exams, right? So feel free, you can Google, especially if you're like unsure about the word. So let's see, hushed. So it says here, in a softened tone of sound, relatively low in volume. Okay, so I can write that down for my definition. A sound that is relatively low in volume and in a softened tone. A sound that is relatively low in volume and in a softened tone. Okay, even here you have some synonyms: muted, quiet, subdued. So I can take those too. Muted, quiet, subdued. Again, these are for the students who are truly struggling. Of course, if you're more advanced, feel free to get your definitions and synonyms from your mind. Okay? So let's see, grandeur. Let's do the same. Grandeur. The quality of being magnificent or splendid or grand. Okay, I like that. But I will drop grand because grand is in grandeur. So I don't think that shows off that I know what I'm talking about. You can't just say it's grand because it's grand, you know? That doesn't make sense. So let's see, definition. And then what about synonyms? What are the synonyms we have here? Brilliance. I don't want to use the same ones as the definition, so I'll drop magnificent and splendid. So what else? Other than brilliance, I could say Hmm. Well, let's look at the thesaurus. Grandeur. Or should I just look for the word grand? Greatness, beauty, opulence. Ooh. Brilliance, greatness, beauty. I could do that. Brilliant, great, beautiful. Nice. What else? Technique. I could call it an oxymoron or contrast. Oxymoron, contrast, connotation, as del queso. Explanation. Explanation. I think the definition and synonyms do a good job, but I should explain it as a whole, right? As an oxymoron itself. So okay, fine. Let me do that. Explanation. So hush grandeur together. What does that mean? Mm, hmm. It means that it is amazing, but in a low-key way, right? In a subtle and understated way, right? Okay, so let me put that. Amazing, but in a subtle and understated way. Like it's not something that's like in your face and like, lights and action, and understated way. Okay, so I've explained it as a whole. Yes, connotation, emotion. I always do the on the surface analysis and then dig deeper. I do it in this flow, in the flow that Estelle Queso comes in. But again, it's up to you what works for you. So I put connotation and emotion at the end. And emotions, I like to give 3. Is it good or is it bad? Well, the hushed part of it makes it feel like it's beautiful, but it is secretive, it's mysterious. So I mean, I can go for overall connotation and say it's positive ultimately. But if you want to show that it has that negative and positive tinge to it, go ahead and do that. That's fine by me as well. But to keep it simple, I'm just going to go for the most biggest vibe. So positive. Let me just put these words so I could use them later. So emotions. Look at all our words. Brilliant, beautiful, muted, quiet. I think there's a like moment where you like have to catch your breath and you're like, wow, So I think, and again, try to use as specific as possible, right, with your words. So I don't want to just say happy. It's like, whoa, like you're surprised, right? Like you're like in awe and admiration, fascination. Okay, I think I'll go with these. Done. So you have all of your working, all of your brainstorming, your ideas. Now you can put it all together into complete sentences. So let's do that since it's still fresh in our mind before we go to the next few. Okay. Let's see. If you want a template, a formula, what I like to do when I write my answer paragraphs is that I like to tell you which paragraph I'm talking about first. So I'll have one sentence where I say, hey, I'm talking about paragraph 1. So I'll go paragraph 1. And I'll use my instructions. I'll use my question as much as I can. Uses language to convey meaning. Okay, let's just copy that. Uses language to convey meaning. Done. So I like to do that. And I like to use my cohesive devices just to break up my three phrases. So I use firstly, secondly, thirdly. And then for the next answer paragraph, I switch it up. I use furthermore, moreover, additionally, you know. So then let's go firstly. You can say the phrase, or you can put in the technique right here. The oxymoron has grandeur is, and then put an adjective. You can say is impactful. So this is the formula, right? Just put your phrase in one sentence first and then go on to give a couple of sentences of explanation. Of course, some students like to go straight to the explanation as well, or they like to embed. That's fine too. That's more advanced. But this let me get through the basics first. You say, hey, I'm talking about paragraph 1. Then you say, hey, this is my first special phrase. Done. And then you go on to explain. And of course, if I'm doing the answer paragraph, I will indent. So I'll start a bit more to the right. Okay, so let's look at what we're working with. Definitions, you can just say that, hey, this is the definition for hush. This is the definition for grandeur. So you can just do that. Hushed is defined as, or means this, right? Hushed is defined as a sound that is relatively low in volume and in a softened tone. Okay. Grandeur, we can put it together while grandeur is, but if you want to put it in a different sentence, that's fine too. You know, if sentences get too long, they can get a little confusing, so it's okay to break them up. Grandeur is defined as the quality of being magnificent or splendid. Done. Okay. And then we have our synonyms, so we can put that together. And we can remind everyone what we're talking about. Bass emitted a harsh grandeur. So we're talking about the bass. So the bass is shown to have properties of both, because it's two different vibes. So of being muted, quiet, and subdued, as well as muted, quiet, and subdued, as well as brilliant, great, and beautiful. So I've put my synonyms this way. That's a lot of conjunctions, but it's okay. As long as it's understandable, right? Okay. So we have our synonyms. And then we can put together the oxymoron, what it means as a whole, right? As a whole, these contrasting words highlight that the bass is amazing, but in a subtle and understated way. As a whole, these contrasting words, so you should learn helper words, showcase, highlight, suggest, right? Memorize some of them, so you have some variety. Highlight that the bass is amazing, but in a subtle and understated way. Maybe you can say even secretive and mysterious. Done. We have that explanation. So we just have to end it with our connotation and emotions. So this phrase has a positive connotation and evokes emotions of awe, admiration, and fascination. This phrase has a positive connotation and evokes emotions of awe, admiration, and fascination. Done. Easy, right? When you take your time, you brainstorm, you can come up with the sentences. You don't have to be blank. You don't have to struggle anymore. Done. Okay, so that's our first one. Let's look at our next phrase. But let me put it up so that I can see the full sentence and the question. So let me just push this down for now. Okay. A gunshot like crack. A gunshot like crack echoed through the air, an iceberg rotating. Okay, so for a simile, that is what stands out to me first and foremost, right? So let's just start with technique. Simile. It's very important to explain the technique as well. So let's just go straight to explanation. So in this case, I wouldn't go for synonyms and definitions, but maybe as I explain, I'm going to think of them. I'm thinking of paraphrasing using my own words. So explanation. So what is being compared to what here? An iceberg rotating. So an iceberg moving, right? An iceberg moving is being compared to the sound of a gun. Okay, so I can write that down. An iceberg, or the other way around. The sound of a gun is being compared to an iceberg rotating. That's fine too. But yes, I want to try to give my synonyms here. So I'm going to say moving, though moving doesn't feel, maybe there are other synonyms that are stronger. An iceberg moving is compared to the sound of a gun. Okay. We can also describe the sound of a gun. Even the word crack is being used here, right? Crack. That's onomatopoeia. It's when the dictionary word sounds like the word in real life, like bang, slam, crack. So gunshot, crack. Can we describe, can we give more detail here? Crack, onomatopoeia. Oh, how do I spell onomatopoeia? Hey, that's a hard word to spell. Okay, crack, onomatopoeia. But yes, gunshot, crack, how do we describe them? Loud, right? Loud, high pitched, boom, crack. High pitched, maybe I can say sharp, harsh, right? So I'm describing the sound here with some adjectives that can help us. What else? Connotation, emotions. Connotation, emotions. Well, speaking of gun, ooh, that's scary. It's a weapon. It's used to hurt people. All the news, all the things we read about guns is that, it can kill, it can hurt, it's bad, right? The fact that the writer made us think of a gun, that can be pointed out. right? We are forced to think of this image of a gun. And whatever adjectives you use, whatever you think about there, it can be connected to the iceberg. So, image of a gun, it's violent, it's destructive, it's chaotic. And now all of these adjectives are going to be put on the iceberg as well because you're comparing them. So now I know that the iceberg is, wild and dangerous. Unpredictable. So it's definitely a negative connotation. And emotions. Well, you're scared. So fear, you're nervous, you're worried, right? So anxiety. What else? Fear, anxiety, maybe there's tension. Okay, so you've used Estelle Queso, you've brainstormed your ideas. Now you just have to put it all together. Okay, so let's go. Secondly, so just point out the phrase first. You can call it a simile. The simile, a gunshot like crack. You can just say it's powerful, full stop, and explain the rest on the next sentence, or you can make it continue. Secondly, the simile, a gunshot like crack, is powerful as it compares I would rather say a moving iceberg, right? A moving iceberg, the sound of it, right? As it compares the sound of an iceberg moving. Okay, fine. It depends. You can edit. Though, of course, in the exam, if you don't like a word, you have to cross it out. I like to just do one dash, one slash, keep it neat. To the sound of a gun. Crack, the onomatopoeia crack, the onomato. Okay, this part is easy to spell, but the final part is Poeia. Okay, worth learning if you want to use this name, the name of this technique in your answers. Okay, the onomatopoeia crack. See, I want to talk about the gun sounds and the crack sounds. So I'm just going to say further emphasizes the, and then I'm putting loud, sharp, harsh. The loud, sharp, and harsh noise produced. Okay. Then I'm going to talk about the image of the gun. The writer also forces the image of a gun into our minds, connecting the moving. Is there another word for breaking? Breaking an iceberg, rotating. Okay, I can say breaking, connecting the breaking of ice to something wild, dangerous, and unpredictable. Okay. Writer forces the image of a gun which is violent, destructive, and chaotic. So you can do both. and chaotic. Of course, I like my rule of thirds, but if you can only think of 2 words, that's better than one. And if you can only think of 1 word, that's better than 0. So it's fine. Violent, destructive, and chaotic into our minds, connecting the breaking of ice to being wild, dangerous, and unpredictable. So that's the link back. Okay, nice. That's the link back. And then we end with connotation and emotions. This phrase has a negative connotation and makes readers feel fear, anxiety, and tension. Done. Okay, I'm going to put this with the rest of the start of the answer paragraph. And we shall go to our last phrase, a roar like a distant waterfall. Let's put it up. I want to see the full sentence. That always helps. Put you down here. Okay, a roar like a distant waterfall. As another chunk of the ice shelf collapsed into the bay. Okay, it has the words like. That's a simile. The ice falling into the water is being compared to a roar and also a waterfall, the sound of a waterfall. If you've ever been, it's quite loud, the water, because it's falling from such a high place. So it's very fast as well. It's very intense. And it's all around you, you know, it's suffocating you. It's all encompassing, really. So we can describe the sound of a waterfall and the sound of a roar, right? The roar, and we can point out how it connects to predators, you know, hunting. The growl, the sound of a ferocious growl. Okay. So yeah, this one, I believe it's most suitable to start with pointing out the technique, the language technique, which is it's a simile, and then explaining what is being compared to what do they have in common, what is being highlighted. So explanation, another chunk of ice. Okay, I'm trying to paraphrase, use my own words. Big piece of ice falling, maybe. The sound of a humongous chunk. Chunk is huge, right? Okay, humongous piece of ice falling into the bay. Bay is water, right? In the water is compared to the sound of a waterfall and a roar. You can just pick one. I mean, I will talk about the roar, so I'm just going to go for waterfall first, to the sound of a waterfall. But you see the word distant there? I don't want to misrepresent. Like, the layers matter. So then let me think of a synonym for distant and put that in as well to make it more credible, more accurate. Falling in the water is compared to the sound of a faraway waterfall. Okay, like, why distant? Like, it's trying to say that it's dangerous, right? Like roar, you know, it's dangerous, waterfall is dangerous, but I suppose distant makes you think of distance. Like, oh, the landscape is actually the landscape is actually very large, very wide. There's a lot of space. That's why it's far away. Maybe then we can point that out, that it's like a wide terrain. It showcases that it's like a large space. Like it could fall right beside you too, though. So be on the lookout. You have been warned, right? Like there is a danger element here, but it's not yet at your doorstep. Okay, so let's see. Let's just describe the waterfall first, the sound of a waterfall. So more description, right? Waterfall, what did I say? It's loud, it's fast, it's all encompassing. And then I wanted to say the distance part can showcase that it's like a wide terrain, so it's far away. Right? Like every word is there for a reason. So you have to find that out. You have to dig that, you have to uncover. Okay, but I want to talk about raw as well and connect it to, makes us think of, connects to predators like lions, tigers. Like their ferocious growl. Growl. Okay. And yeah, link back. What does that say about the ice? That the ice is dangerous, right? Link back to ice falling, like ice detonating, destructing, right? The destruction of ice, the destruction of ice is wild, unpredictable, scary. Wild, unpredictable. Oh, did we already use these words for the last one? Let me check. We used the words wild, dangerous, unpredictable here. We could use the same words, but it's always good to have a wider vocabulary. So let's see. We can, what is another adjective? Rampant, ferocious. So we already have that. Ferocious, feral, rampant. Okay. So maybe we can use the word rampant. The destruction of ice is rampant, ferocious, feral, has a feral nature to it. The destruction of ice has a feral, feral. So if I want to say unpredictable, powerful, right? It's like there's something powerful here. Has a feral, it makes you feel powerless, nature, right? Like it's so huge and you're so small. Feral, powerful, wildness to it, right? The destruction of ice has a feral, powerful angle element here, right? Angle, angel, angle to it. Okay. Yeah. Done. So we have the technique. We have a few highlights. Can we go straight to connotation and emotions? Yeah, I think that's good enough. Connotation, emotions, roar, waterfall and all, definitely negative. Emotions, Hmm. It's similar to the previous one as well, but I again don't want to use the same words. So instead of fear, I can say it's scary. I mean, the fact that it's far away, but it could be beside you, I think there's some suspense to it. Definitely. What else? Fear, anxiety, tension, scariness, suspense. Hmm. Scary, fear, concern, uneasiness. Oh, I like that. Dread. I like that. Dread. Yeah. Synonyms, thesaurus is really great so that you don't reuse the same words over and over again. Okay, so we have our brainstorming, our ideas. So let's put it all together. Let's see. Thirdly, the simile. Okay, let's put this. The raw, a roar, like a distant waterfall. Oh, hold on. Stay in call. Since I'm the only one in here, it logs off. So I have to be careful. I want to make sure it is being recorded. Okay. Thirdly, let's make sure it's here. Thirdly, the simile, a roar like a distant waterfall, is we've used the words impactful, powerful. We can just say it's strong as it compares the sound of a humongous piece of ice falling into the water to the sound of a faraway waterfall. Okay, I might have to change it up grammatically. The sound of a humongous piece of ice falling into the water to the sound of a faraway waterfall. A waterfall, I want to describe the sound of a waterfall. A waterfall is loud, fast, and all-encompassing. Loud, fast, and all-encompassing, but the distance highlights the wide terrain, far-reaching terrain. Highlights, like, so it's muted, right? But it sounds muted due to the vast terrain. Okay, so more description of the sound, that nuance. Now I'm going to have to talk about the raw. The word raw is used. The word roar is also used, which connects to predators, the ferocious growl, the ferocious growling of predators like tigers. Making readers understand that the destruction of ice has a feral, powerful quality to it. Yeah, maybe other than angle, feral and powerful quality to it. Nice. Okay, end it with connotation and emotions. This phrase has a negative connotation. This phrase has a negative connotation and invokes feelings of dread, suspense, and scariness amongst readers. Done. See, if you use the techniques, you have your ideas, you brainstorm, you can write them all down, glue, like stick them all together, and they become full sentences. And before you know it, they become a full answer paragraph. One more thing we have to do is to do the overall effect. So looking at our three phrases, summarize. What do they all have in common? And we just have to take the starting here. So what are the narrator's first impressions of the base station Antarctica? The narrator's first impressions of the base station in Antarctica is, oh, did I spell it? Yeah, you want to make sure your spelling is correct, especially if the words are in the insert. Good impression for the examiners and all. Okay, so you can give 3 adjectives. But there's some layers here, right? Let's read the full answer so far. That will help us understand. So we've said, paragraph 1 uses language to convey meaning. Firstly, the oxymoron hushed grandeur is impactful. Hushed is defined as a sound that is relatively low in volume and in a softened tone. Grandeur is defined as the quality of being magnificent or splendid. The bass is shown to have properties of both muted, quiet, and subdued, as well as brilliant, great, and beautiful. Of being both. As a whole, these contrasting words highlight that the bass is amazing, but in a subtle and understated way, even secretive and mysterious. This phrase has a positive connotation and evokes emotions of awe, admiration, and fascination. Secondly, the simile, a gunshot like crack, is powerful as it compares the sound of an iceberg moving to the sound of a gun. The onomatopoeia crack further emphasizes the loud, sharp, and harsh noise produced. The writer also forces the image of a gun, which is violent, destructive, and chaotic, into our minds, connecting the breaking of ice to being wild, dangerous, unpredictable. This phrase has a negative connotation and makes readers feel fear, anxiety, and tension. Thirdly, the simile roar like a distant waterfall is strong, as it compares the sound of a humongous piece of ice falling into the water to the sound of a faraway waterfall. A waterfall sounds loud, fast, and all-encompassing, but it sounds muted due to the vast terrain. Let's edit. But here it is. But here it is muted. The word roar is also used, which connects to ferocious growling of predators like tigers, making readers understand that the destruction of ice has a feral and powerful quality to it. This phrase has a negative connotation and invokes feelings of dread, suspense, and scariness amongst readers. Okay, so now you have all three phrases and all three explanations. And in fact, it has one good, two bad, right? Positive and negative connotations. So you want to write a couple adjectives to hold that nuance, the layers. So it's beautiful. So you can say, the first impression, it's beautiful, right? It's wonderful. But, right, there's something scary here. So we can say, I don't know, but you're warned. You have to be careful. Wild, right? It's wild, unpredictable. Intimidating. Is that it is wonderful, but intimidating. So here only two adjectives, but since it's saying something that is a pro and a con, I think two works. The contrast there, it works. So yes, that's your mark for overview, overall effect. And again, this can be at the start of your paragraph as well, or at the end. Of course, the mark scheme puts it at the start. Of course, go ahead, look at the mark scheme. I wanted to put this at the start, but I think it's okay. I wanted to put this beside the question up front. But yes, my point about the mark scheme. Of course, look at 2020 to 2026. 2027, the paper is a little different, but don't worry. It still has this question. It's just asking you to look at one paragraph instead of two. And the extra questions that they've added are basically writer's effect questions. So you need the same techniques for those as well. So don't worry, you can still practice with all the past year papers. All these videos still matter, are still relevant. So feel free to watch them, share them. And yes, it's quite long. So let me get back to you. Let's get part 2 for paragraph 13. Thank you.